Pete Calandra here, and today's video is another companion piece for the Audio MIDI I class I teach at the Copland School of Music. In today's video, we'll work in the MIDI editor, taking a MIDI performance and snapping it to the grid. What I have here is an 8-bar piano piece that I've improvised into Pro Tools. Before I start, let me just say up front that I don't think that all music should be gridded. There's a lot of times where you want your performance to have a more free feel to it, a more natural feel to it. But my concept here is to learn how to manually snap each of those MIDI notes to grid so that you have the basic of MIDI editing down. Then later on, you can edit some notes that they snap to the grid, or you can perform functions such as quantize to change the timing of your performance. But I always like to start with the basics. There are 3 ways to see MIDI information in Pro Tools. The first one is right here in the Arrange page, and I do not recommend working this way, but I'll show it to you anyway. So if you go right here, this is the track view selector. Click on that, and you can see all sorts of options. If you click on notes, you'll see that there are a bunch of MIDI notes in here on a piano roll. Let's get back to clip view, and I'll explain in a later video why I like clip view better in the Arrange page. The second way to see the MIDI information is to go to the window menu and go to the MIDI editor. And that brings up a separate window. And as you can see here, this is nice. It's very large, and you can see all sorts of information here. This is great to work on if you've got a second monitor. You can have this open constantly in your second monitor and just go back and forth between your Arrange page and your MIDI editor as you're building up a MIDI track. The third way, and I like my class to work this way, is to use this pull-up MIDI editor that can be accessed down here at the bottom of the Arrange page with this upward-facing triangle. So click on that, and you will get a new MIDI editor. This is the MIDI editor. Before we get into a detailed discussion as to how to work in it, it's good to know what everything is and how to resize this window. You may open it up for the first time and the window may be very small, much smaller than this. You can easily resize it. If you take your cursor and hover over the top border, you'll notice that the cursor shape changes. Simply click and drag down to make it smaller, click and drag up to make it bigger. You can do that also with the bottom border by hovering, and you'll notice that the mouse pointer changes shape to a cross, and you can click and drag up. These areas down here are the different editing lanes. We'll be getting into a discussion on these in the next video, but for right now, we'll just shut that by clicking right here. Okay, the next thing I'd like you to notice is that right here, this is the toolbar for the edit window, and it contains several of the functions found in the edit page toolbar. Has your grid activation, has your edit mode, will be operating obviously in grid. And right here, it tells you the name of the track you're editing. And here you have your pencil tool, your grabber tool, your selector tool, and your trimmer tool. And that's all you need to know for today. There'll be more things to learn about the toolbar, but we'll get into discussing those things when we have to use them. One other thing to know is that you can reshape the size of these notes. What you can do is in this box here, below the key focus box, the bottom of this box is MIDI zoom out, and the top of this box is MIDI zoom in. So if I click on the bottom of this box, the notes will get smaller. And if I click on the top of the box, the notes will get bigger. Right? So you can adjust the size of the notes to your taste or to whatever you're working on. Now you'll notice that when you're in the MIDI editor, that your key focus has transferred. See, it's no longer active in your Arrange page or your edit window, but it's active in the MIDI editor. That's good. And also that means that your R and T keys work to zoom in and zoom out. if you've got a bunch of tracks in your session and you only want to work on one, to make sure that it's the track you want to work on, you'll go to this tracks menu and you'll make sure that the track that you want to work on has this little dot here. And that's the only one that has that dot in this column here. Now, notice that it's highlighted. If you option click there, it's unhighlighted. To get this information to be the same color as in the arrange page, simply click on this box here. Let's zoom in a little bit further. This area here is the toolbar for the MIDI editor. These are the tools you'll use to work in this window. These tools up here do not work down here. They only work in the arrange page or the edit page. But in the MIDI editor, these tools work. You'll notice that I've got my grid set to 16th notes because I've played a passage that has 16th notes in it. Each one of these lines here, these up and down lines, is a 16th note. You'll notice that the quarter notes are a little bit darker, the grid, and at the beginning of each measure, it's even darker. So there's 3 levels of color or darkness for your grid. The light, which is the subdivision, the next darkest, which is your beat, and the darkest, which is your measure. In order for us to start manually snapping all this stuff to the grid, what I'm going to do is use the trim tool and very simply take the mouse and click just after the note starts, just before the grid. And see how it just snaps everything to the grid? So see, I'm a little bit after the start of the note, right by the grid. And if you're a little late, you can pull it. So in other words, if this note was here, and to unhighlight a note, you'll just simply click up in the timeline. This note I want to start on the downbeat. I would just simply click and drag. Okay, that's for this note. And snap, 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 snap. Now the other thing is I want to quantize the ends of my notes as well so that they're the exact length that I want them to be. So I'll go on to the other side of the note and notice how the trimmer tool changes direction and click that way. I'll drag this one out. I'll drag this one in and click there, click there. Just clean this stuff up. Right? Now, I don't think that this is the most musical thing. You're making this be perfectly metronomic, but this is an exercise basically to teach you how to use the trimmer tool. So let's say that you feel like this performance in bar 2, so let me just zoom out a little bit, is all a little bit ahead of the beat, right? So I can take the grabber tool and simply click up somewhere in this area and drag down and select all these notes so they're all highlighted and drag them all like that back. And you'll notice that they're not all quantized or snapped to the grid, but they're all a little bit more perfect. So now that you've done that, you can just have a little bit less work to do with the grid snapping. Some of the stuff looks good, right? And you can see that I'm pretty quick at this because I've done this for years. And you can get quick at it too. It just takes a little practice. You can do that with different segments also. So in other words, you can grab just these 2 and drag them over, and then you can maybe just grab just these 3. And the same thing you can do with the selector tool. You can just click and drag and select all of those that way, and then go back to your grabber tool and move it wherever you want. Or you can just individually grab, that's another thing you can do, and drag the note starts right onto the grid as well. right? So that's another way of getting there. So just grab and drag. The one other thing I want to show you is how to quickly navigate between these tools. Now, if you remember back in one of the earlier videos in the setup, in the Apple system preferences, in the keyboard, we set up the Apple preferences to use F1, F2 keys as standard function keys. That means that we can now use those keys to navigate the toolbar. The trim tool is F6. The selector is F7. The grabber is F8. Alternatively, if you're on a laptop and you don't have function keys, you can use the Command key, hold the Command key down and hit the number 2 on the top of your QWERTY keyboard, and that will get you to the trimmer. 3 will get you to the selector. 4 will get you to the grabber. 5 will get you to scrub. 6 will get you to the pencil. There is a smart tool, which is when you click on this border and the tool shape changes depending upon where you are. That's okay, and some people get used to that. I actually prefer to use my thumb on the Command key, and just between the 2, 3, and 4 number, I can go very quickly and change my tool for MIDI editing. So that's a quick video on MIDI editing. Thanks for watching. I hope this video has been helpful, and stay tuned for the next one.